what's waiting for us on the other side? Like 90% of the world burning in hell, tormented forever, and then the rest of them partying in heaven, just trying to ignore their loved ones suffering. No, what's waiting for us on the other side is peace and safety and security, and a God who is big enough and benevolent enough and wise enough to be able to handle the things he created.
The Soul Inspire podcast is brought to you by dalecross.net. Discover the freedom, bliss, and ecstasy within you. At dalecross.net, I can help connect you with your soul's purpose, passion, and mission. Your soul signed up for something great. Discover what it is with the tools I offer. Book a free one-on-one consultation now at dalecross.net and live your greatness. This is Dale Cross, and welcome to another edition of Soul Inspire. This is the podcast that features spiritually awakened souls on their own soul journey to help inspire you on your soul journey. Welcome to the show. My special guest today, I'm so excited. This is conscious influencer Melissa Denyce, and I really, really appreciate this woman. She has an amazing channel, and she has had quite an incredible spiritual journey, and we're going to talk about that today. So she's a conscious influencer, Melissa Denyce, and she has an amazing YouTube channel that you can check out, which is called Melissa Denyce, right? Melissa Denyce is the name.
It's called Love Covered Life.
Oh, there you go. I knew that because I love her channel. Right. All right. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Dale, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to meet you and honored to have the opportunity to speak with you.
Likewise. So let's start out by, you've had a very varied, play on words there. You've had a very varied spiritual background, and I would like you to start out by sharing some background, like from early days, what kind of spiritual background you hail from, etc. Go ahead, go for it.
I would love to. So I was born into a very strict branch of Christianity, known as Reformed Baptist or Calvinistic Christianity. So for anybody who's unfamiliar with that, Reformed Baptists follow the 5 points of Calvinism, which are total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, and perseverance of the saints. So to sum it all up, I was taught everybody is born completely and totally depraved with no good in them whatsoever.
Good Lord.
That God, what's that?
I said, good Lord. Sorry.
Yeah, completely corrupt.
Yes.
Not a spark of good in them. And God knew this when he created us. And the consequences for this, of course, is eternal conscious torment in hell. And God knew before we were born that we were all headed there, except for a small group of elect, which he preordained to save and take to heaven with him. So basically, God created 80+% of the world's population for the sole purpose of burning in hell forever.
Gee, now what kind of a God would do that? I'm like, okay.
Not somebody that I would call God.
Yeah, me neither.
And to top that, Jesus came to die on the cross for only the sins of the elect. Oh. And their reasoning for that was that the blood of Christ couldn't be wasted. So if somebody was destined to go to hell, why would Jesus die for them? What? So this is what I was raised in.
Interesting.
And I always like to clarify when I say this, that I am criticizing the religious atmosphere I was raised in. I have an amazing, wonderful family, but this church atmosphere that I was raised in really contributed to me becoming depressed, developing a whole host of mental and emotional issues. I had social anxiety, performance anxiety, severe depression, to the point where my mom wanted me to go on medication. And I became suicidal as a teenager. I was also taught a lot of really restricting doctrines that a lot of people are taught within fundamentalist Christianity about that you, especially for women, you're just really shut down and told you don't have a voice, you don't get to do anything except keep the home and have children, which of course that's an honorable and wonderful thing to do. But when you're told that's the only choice you have, you don't have a voice, you don't get to have thoughts or opinions about anything. So I was very crippled. I was very much a doormat. But I had this, and I don't know if you want me to go into this, so just let me know. But I was also born with these memories of something that happened before, what I now call my pre-birth memories. So I had this memory of the divine, things that I couldn't put into words and I didn't understand. So I had these two contrasting things going on, what I remembered about God and what I knew innately about God and what I was taught about God. And it was very hard for me to contain the things that I remembered. And that it was always sort of coming out. And when I turned 19, I was legally an adult. I didn't want to make a scene, but I told my parents, I'm legally an adult now. I'm going to find a different church because I just can't keep doing this. And I began attending a non-denominational charismatic church at that time. I was drawn in first because of the healing rooms. They had healing rooms there, and they claimed that God could do a supernatural healing for me. And so I went to get healed of my depression. And the people who were in the healing rooms, they laid their hands on me and prayed. And the next morning after that, I woke up completely healed of my depression.
Wow.
And so needless to say, I went back. This church was not a Calvinistic church. It was an Arminian church. So they taught that, yes, most of the world's population is still going to burn in hell, but it's not God's will. And that was what I needed at that point in my life. Compared to what I had been raised in, that was like a soothing salve to my soul. God, they would tell me, God wants to heal you. God wants to redeem you. God doesn't want anybody to go to hell. And I just came alive and really grew under that teaching at that point in my life. And I attended that church for about 4 years. Do you want me to continue into my deconstruction journey?
Yeah, we'll go there first, and then we can go into the pre-birth memories, because that's an interesting contrast.
Okay, yes. So I ended up moving across country with my husband when I was 21, and we got married. And I got sort of really hardcore in my fundamentalist faith at that time. It was the only time that I was really sort of like just locked into that mindset after having moved across country and sort of shut off that connection that I had to my knowing with God. And things did not go well for me.
Okay.
My husband and I kept losing our jobs. We lost our house twice. We lost our car. We just went through a really difficult time. Our marriage was on the rocks. And at that point in my life, I started to think about the things that I was suppressing. And I was at this point where I had lost everything. Well, not everything, but we had lost our house for the second time in 3 years. My husband and I had both lost our jobs, and then he fell and shattered his leg, so he couldn't look for a new job. And then we found out, as we're jobless and losing our house, that I was pregnant, and that was obviously an awesome thing, but it was scary. And I was at rock bottom, and I said, okay, I am willing to do whatever it takes to find peace. I need whatever I have learned in the church is not giving me good enough answers.
Not working.
Not good enough, not helping. And so I started reading near-death experiences, which I had known for a long time that they existed, but I was avoiding it because I was suppressing that.
Yeah.
And I still remember the night I read Kimberly Clark Sharp's near-death experience, and it reminded me, which we'll get into as we go along, but exactly of experiences that I had had.
Wow.
And the answers, I just kept consuming them, like reading dozens and dozens, and the answers were just coming in so simple. What is the purpose of life? To find the right religion and believe all the right doctrine and hope that you're in the in-group and you make it to heaven. And the purpose of life is to love.
Yeah, simple.
That's it.
Simple.
And what's waiting for us on the other side? Like 90% of the world burning in hell, tormented forever, and then the rest of them partying in heaven, just trying to ignore their loved ones suffering. No, what's waiting for us on the other side is peace and safety and security, and a God who is big enough and benevolent enough and wise enough to be able to handle the things he created. He can handle our mistakes. He can handle anything that we think is going wrong. He can handle the worst in us because he's that much bigger. And so it was deeply satisfying to discover these truths. And I went through a phase where I was still holding on to my Christian upbringing. And so I went through a phase where I was a Christian universalist. And I went back through the Bible and began rereading everything and seeing everything in a different light. And I sort of moved through that phase. Now, I still highly value and love Jesus Christ, and I see him as my highest teacher, and I still believe that he did come to save us. I just see things in a slightly different perspective than I did before.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, that was my deconstruction in a nutshell. Obviously, it took several years to sort of go through all of that. Do you have any specific questions about that?
Yeah, so it was a process. So you found that, so this was so you were actually raised, what, from 2 years old, or from you were born? You were raised in a religious background.
Yes.
And of course, we're not putting that down, because that's the perspective. That was what you were meant to have. And your parents, obviously, they're simply, probably, am I guessing right, following what their parents taught them. So they're doing the best they can. You're doing the best you can. So it's all good. It's all God, right?
Yes.
I like to say that. It's all good. It's all God. I get that from Wayne Dyer. I don't know if you know him, but anyways,
yes.
It's all good. It's all God. And so did you notice so you said it wasn't working for you, and then you were like, you were going to do anything it took to find peace. So you started researching these near-death experience stories, and so you were able to get peace from that. Now, is part of that to do with the fact, now you can go into that other part, with the fact that you had some pre-birth memories? Tell us about that.
Absolutely.
That's the mix. Yeah. That's the mixture. Yeah.
Yes. So a lot of my memories are not like crystal clear, and so I don't talk about them a lot because I don't want to mislead people and say, well, I remember this, but it's more of just this impression of something I remember, and it was like there's no words for it, so anything I say is going to fall far short, but it's like this unconditional, overwhelming, eternal, all-powerful, like hurricane of love and light. And I remember just being so caught up in that. And I remember that the feeling, it's incredibly hard to describe, but the feeling, just this knowing that it was the answer to all of your needs. Like if you could just be in that light, if you could just be in that presence, it would satisfy your deepest needs. And the excitement on steroids that goes along with, I remember being in a place and seeing the light and feeling just this incredible longing and knowing that's where I'm going. That's the answer to everything. I can't describe it. It's like, it's music. It's this music that is indescribable. I remember the music very clearly, but it's music and it's math and it's energy and it's power and it's perfect, pure goodness and love. And it's very hard to describe it. I also have memories of other things, just impressions. I remember being in a very dark and peaceful healing space. I remember a nursery type place that was full of this incredible, brilliant light and just the innocence of the souls that were there. I have a memory of Jesus actually being in a place with Jesus and other children or young souls, of which I was a part. But it's all just impressions, and it's honestly driven me crazy throughout most of my life, especially my childhood, trying to remember, what was this? Why does nobody else seem to know about it? How can I get it back? Because I can't find it anywhere. And it would come out in my dreams. I would dream about it, and I would hear the music. I would still hear the music when I had woken up.
Is this like unearthly music then? It's otherworldly music. It's not like hymns in a church.
There's different kinds too.
Okay.
Different kinds for the different spaces. Like with the healing space, it was so incredibly quiet and peaceful. But then there's also this music that went along with the light that I tried to describe it like it's constantly building and building and building and resolving as it builds, but it like resolves, but it doesn't resolve at the same time. So it's like, it's perfection, but it's becoming perfect. Wow. Is the best way I can describe it.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. And so these memories that you have, you can bring them up at will, or it's just in a dream, or how did you come across, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you connect with this now? Is it through dreaming and just you have the memories are quite crystal clear?
The memory of the feeling, the music is very clear. The feeling of what it is like to be in the light it is the realest thing about me. It is what's driven my entire life.
Wow.
I do still occasionally have dreams where it comes to me. And then it's obviously a lot more real than it is in this life.
Okay, so this isn't actually, you haven't actually had near-death experience. You've had a pre-birth experience. Am I reading this correct?
I also had what I call a near-death-like experience. This happened when I was 18 or 19.
Okay, let's go into that now. That sounds good. This is a good segue into that. Okay, yeah.
Absolutely. So this happened shortly before I left my childhood church for the charismatic church that I ended up in. And it happened while I was still very depressed. And so as I just said, I had these pre-birth memories, and it was driving my entire life. I was searching for this light, and I would go out and do things. I would go out in blizzards. I would go out and like drive my car out to the edge of the city and just get out under the sky and pray and try to stimulate some sort of experience, trying to find this light somewhere in this world. And of course, it never happened. And I would beg God to give me an experience. Like every night when I went to bed for years on end, I would beg him, please give me an experience. I'm miserable. I'm depressed. I have these voices screaming in my head. I was suicidal at the time. I just need relief from this. Can I please just have some type of experience where I can feel that again? And for years it did not happen. And then for some reason, I can't explain why, but one night it happened. So I was laying in my bed, praying my usual, please give me an experience. Please let me feel your presence. And my eyes were closed. And all of a sudden I was in an ocean of love. It was like flipping into another reality. So I was still at that point, I still perceived myself to be in my body laying on my bed. But all of a sudden I was in another dimension. And I was in this ocean of incredible love, and I could feel waves washing over me and inside me. And I immediately, there was no like wondering what's going on. This is so strange. What just happened? It was just instant recognition. I recognized it as that thing that I was looking for, and I knew it was my creator. And I remembered God for who he or she really was, because he and she both fall far short of describing what that is.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a metaphysical phenomenon of love. Like, love is a real, literal thing. It's not just an abstract concept. It's a literal, physical, metaphysical thing.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it was a presence. It was a being. So that was love personified. And I recognized this being as my eternal father and mother. I remembered that this is where I had come from. This is where I had been born out of this ocean of love. I had been nurtured in this ocean of love. And it was like my eternal father being held in my father's arms and being nurtured in my mother's womb at the same time.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah. And I said, where have you been all my life? I've been looking for you my entire life. And after that happened, I felt like I expanded out of my head. So my consciousness expanded out of my head. I would no longer perceive myself to be in my room or to have a body, but I was up somewhere in the universe above the earth. Now, this part of the experience, it was not visual. It wasn't like I didn't have any of my five senses. It was complete consciousness.
Wow.
And so I began asking this being that I was with questions, but not with my mouth. It was mind to mind or direct consciousness.
Telepathic?
Yeah. Telepathic, yes, but there were no words. It was just knowing. So I would ask a question, and a download of information would be given to me instantaneously, where I would know not only the answer to that question, but how that question fit together with everything else in the universe, which is inconceivable to me now. But at the time, I was just asking and being given answers just like this. And I was expanding at the speed of light. My consciousness expanded just like that, until I felt that I knew everything that there was to know. And my being encompassed everything. And so a lot of people ask, well, when you join with the totality, do you lose yourself? My experience was, no, you can't lose yourself, because your sense of being is what you are. But you can encompass a lot more than you think you do.
Okay, so how do you think that relates to the I know Aaron Abke talks about this a lot, the big I and the little I. So I think you're referring to the big I, right?
Yes.
So the little I, which would be the ego self, is likely upon death. I don't remember, but transcended at that point where the ego is disintegrated or dropped. But now people say, well, will I lose myself? Well, no, you won't lose your big self, because you are it, right? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Okay. Another thing that sort of helps to explain that is, at the point that I felt that I left my body and my consciousness expanded out of my head. It was like waking up. It was like I was waking up from a nightmare, and I instantaneously knew a lot of things. So first of all, the universe is safe and benevolent. We are eternally safe and secure, and there's nothing that could ever actually harm us. We can go through a lot of painful experiences, but those things cannot actually harm us. And in that place, I remember it was like God, or this presence, was almost laughing at the thought that we think he would actually allow us to be hurt or to be eternally lost. Just like a grandfather good-naturedly chuckling at his grandchildren.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
So when I woke up into that state, it was like, oh yeah, I was so depressed down there, and why? everything's fine. I haven't done anything wrong. There's nothing to feel guilty about. God loves me. He has my back. I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to. He's guiding me on my journey. There's nothing I can do to disappoint him or let him down. And so that me that I thought I was, that I was so wrapped up in, was just who I am in this lifetime on this earth. And it's not that that isn't a part of me, but there's so much more. And I had forgotten that.
This is an amazing story. And I think this is going to, or this already has, I'm sure, touched so many lives as it has mine. So I really appreciate you sharing this. And the channel, Love Covered Life, is, everybody's got to check that out because it's an amazing channel. So let me ask you this. I like what you said. It really, really struck me when you just said the universe, I think you said something along the lines of a few minutes ago, universe is benevolent. God's always got our back. And there's nothing that can touch us. We are safe. Now, the question I have for you is it possible to anchor heaven on earth? In other words, bring that experience, at least part of it. I mean, obviously we could bring the whole thing, but can people, when they wake up, sort of like bring that heaven to earth, bring that down to here, to the point where, in my teaching, I like to say this 3D reality is a masquerade. It is masquerading as a threatening, dangerous place, and it's all a big scam.
Oh, that is such a good way of putting it.
That's coming up in the future book. I'm putting that one in the book because I just love that. Spirit gave that to me. I just love that. And my idea, let's see if you agree with this. My idea is that we're not only are we emotionally, mentally, psychologically safe once we ground this presence, but we can be physically safe too. Harm does not have to come to us at all, even physically. Would you agree? When we realize that the supreme reality is love, but I think it takes I'm not saying, oh, everybody should run out and jump off of buildings and stuff. I'm not saying that and test this, but what I am saying is that this is a illusion in a way. It is a reality, yes, but there's a more supreme reality, and that supreme reality, we're already safe, so we can bring that into the physical reality as well and be safe. The caveat is that we need to recognize that, and we need to feel it in our heart. Otherwise, yes, the world is a threatening, dangerous place.
I'm really glad that you brought this up, because this is the focal point of what I'm trying to do right now. So to your first point about can we anchor ourselves in that reality here? Yes. And it's so much more simple than any religion will tell you. All you have to do is recognize that you are that. You are already that. You've just forgotten. And the most commonly recommended thing, because I ask all of my guests that I have, and I interview near-death experiencers, I ask them all the same question: how do you access that here? And almost 100% of them say meditation. You have to tune in to yourself, to that I am presence, and you have to become grounded in who you really are. And then you can, the depths of the love and the peace and the security and the joy that you can experience here knows no bounds once you tune into its source, and you are that source. And then to your second point about physical safety, I do think that the mind is very powerful, and the beliefs that we create about our reality are very powerful. And I'm not going to say that all physical harm can be avoided there, because I do believe that we come here to experience certain difficult things.
That's true.
But
Context.
yes, even in that, we still have a choice. We still have free will once we get here on what path we're going to take to accomplish those lessons. And I have had instances in my life where I was physically protected from something. And I do think that that's very possible, especially when it comes to your physical health. Obviously, that what we believe about our bodies often manifests.
Yes. Have you heard about the multiple realities story?
Not a lot, just what you were telling me about earlier.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the idea is that this, the guy, they did blood tests on this guy, and we could say that his personality was, now I'm going to put a disclaimer in here, everybody. Consult your doctor. Okay. I'm not saying this happens for everybody. And we need doctors. We love doctors and we love medicine. But in this case, this guy named, I guess we'll call him John. I can't remember his name. There was a study done on this guy with multiple personalities. And one of the personalities had cancer. And so they did the blood test. It showed a cancer. But then a few minutes later, he switched to a different personality. And that personality's belief system, or I should say identity, in that particular identity, that person is cancer free. They retested the blood a few minutes later, not a trace of cancer in the body. Then he switched back to that first one that had a cancer. They retested the blood, the cancer shows up again. I mean, what does that say? It says that, wow, there's something to do with beliefs as well, or identity, and embodiment, and embodying cancer, or embodying health, or embodying it's I mean, so, and then there's the idea that the love frequency, 528 hertz, if we can anchor that all the time, we attract our, actually, I think you said it on your, you said, I'm pretty sure you said this in one of your videos, we attract our state. Was that you that said?
It may have been.
Yeah, instead of, which I thought was really good, instead of saying your beliefs or you said your state.
Your state of being.
Yeah, so because you have to, in order to attract negative events in our life, I really believe in something called law of attraction. And in law of attraction, you have to be on that same resonant frequency in order to actually draw the event to you. So I'm not saying that we're all going to be, that we can all avoid physical harm for the rest of our lives. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's possible to, it would only be possible if one could sustain that frequency and sort of like anchor that and sustain it constantly. I think then maybe that's possible to avoid a lot of dangerous things. Does that resonate, or?
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about law of one before.
Yes.
And that comes in a little bit here too. I just got to thinking.
Okay, please share
as
that.
You were talking.
Yeah.
I do remember I read in Law of One about Jesus specifically and how he was a fourth density wanderer who came back to third density, and he had these amazing abilities, healing abilities and psychic abilities, honestly, and how these things are common for the higher densities, where beings have like balanced their energy system in their body, and they're a fully crystallized light being living in perfect balance and perfect harmony. And then these higher abilities start to become unlocked, of healing or foresight or knowing or whatever it may be. And so as we evolve right now in third density, where we're at right now with our chemical bodies, we experience a lot more pain and suffering. But as we evolve, as we grow spiritually, it will be a lot more normal. It will be a lot more obvious that what we're embodying, what we're believing, what we're thinking is what we're creating.
Yeah. Oh, and you brought a really good, you just made me think of a really important point. I want to bless the pain and suffering as well, because everything is one. And without the pain and suffering, without the negative side or the negative path, how would we experience the positive?
Right.
So I think that part of transcending pain and suffering is, first of all, integrating it and recognizing that it's just as valid as the health part.
Mm-hmm.
Not something the ego wants to, embrace, because the ego just wants a good time, right? And be free of pain and suffering. But it's interesting that how would we know what it's like to be wealthy if we didn't first experience poverty? The contrast. I feel like that pain and suffering is part of this 3D game of life. And it's an important part. It may be unpleasant and we don't like it. It's still valid, because I don't think we could have any experiences, would you say, if we didn't have the up, down, left, right, the duality.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, it sounds like you have learned a little bit how to live in non-duality. Do you want to share that a little bit?
Well, I'm on the journey.
We all are. Yeah.
Diving deeper and deeper with each passing day. But non-duality basically means that all is one. There is one infinite creator, and we are all an aspect of that. Mm-hmm. The experience of good and evil, as you were saying, is to help us grow more into reality, into truth, which is that God is love and God is one. Mm-hmm. Something interesting, which I haven't talked about a lot yet. A lot of near-death experiencers are given the message that life is a school where we learn how to love. And they'll say all different variations on the same statement. Life is all about love. We're here to learn how to love. Why do we have to go through pain and suffering? To teach us about love through the contrast. So I've talked about this quite a bit on my channel, and people always push back on it, which is, I understand, because I question it myself. Mm-hmm. Well, isn't there any other way to learn about love than through suffering? Isn't there a better way? And that's something I don't think anybody really has the answer to. But I do suspect, and I'm starting to think more and more, that there is more than just learning about love going on. It's not so much that we were expanded away from our source and now we're going on this evolutionary journey back to our source and that's it. I think that everything is evolving upward. Mm-hmm. God himself is expanding more and more into love, which doesn't mean he's not already perfectly loving, mm-hmm. but it was like that music that I heard where it is building and resolving eternally. So love itself is expanding, and we are part of that. So we probably don't have to go through this suffering because we're already love, but because love is expanding and because we want to be part of that, we choose to go farther away from our source. Mm-hmm. So like a person will go into the gym and lift weights to grow their muscles through resistance. This is something we want to do. We want to be part of the expansion of love. So we expose ourselves to resistance.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. That definitely resonates. For those of you who are listening to the audio version of the podcast, for those of you who are watching the video part of this podcast, you may not know what we were talking about earlier. We should clarify that Law of One is a teaching. It's a channeled teaching, correct?
Yes.
And people can find that. They can go to Aaron Abke's YouTube channel. I don't know. There's lots of different places where you can just Google Law of One, and you can. We won't go into the back. You can look for yourself. There's plenty of places to Google that Law of One, but it's a teaching that I'm starting to look a bit more into. And obviously, Melissa, you are also looking into it. Yes.
Yes, I got into it because of Aaron Abke.
There you go. It's fascinating. He's got a great channel too. So that is, so I just want to wrap things up by asking you this. Where do you feel, obviously all of us on our spiritual journeys are constantly evolving. That's the whole game, right? That's the whole purpose, is to evolve. And it seems to me that you've come a long way. You were raised in an extremely, it sounds like, well, if it's Calvinistic, rather uptight, maybe, and I respect Calvinists because that's your view, right? I'm not saying they're they are good people. I just feel maybe they're a little bit away from source. Maybe it's like it's my judgment, I guess, but based on my experience. But they're right where they're meant to be, right, Melissa? That's and that you were right where you were meant to be at that time. So where would you say you are now in your current day spiritual journey as related to that sort of beginning point, starting point of more uptight religious thing?
Yeah, well, first, yes, I wouldn't change anything, because the journey of awakening has been, I mean, that moment when I realized, oh, wait, God is love.
Yeah.
It was worth everything that I went through. And I'm so glad I did it. But where am I now? I am just diving deeper and deeper into the reality of God within me and within everything else. I'm undergoing this awakening where I'm realizing it's all God. It's like you said, it's all good, it's all God, it's all God, it's all good, it's all divine. And so my daily practice is to see God, well, first to be anchored within myself, and then to see God everywhere. And it just takes all the stress out of life, because every interaction you're just thinking, I'm talking to God. Yes. This person is exactly how they're supposed to be. And you can see the beauty in each person and in each situation. And it's really incredible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I like how you said, it's all, well, how did you put it? It's all God. Oh, it's everything is God. It's all God. It's all good. That's my favorite saying from the famous Wayne Dyer, who is one of my, how do I say, one of my heroes, Wayne Dyer. I love that. Love him. He has since passed, although I still feel him, still feel his presence. And I'm sure many people do. And I like the idea that we can see God in everything and everyone, including some of the people that might bite back on this interview, and some of the more religious people might actually have a problem with them. What we're talking about here, and that's good. That's fine. That's good. We send love to them. They're beautiful.
Yes.
Souls. They're beautiful souls on their journey too, and they can feel free to have their opinions, and that's all good, and we respect them. That being said, this is our journey. This is what we've experienced, which is equally valid to what they're experiencing. So there you go. Fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience today on this episode?
Yes, I guess the two most important things would be that you are divine and God is within you. So dive into that. Try to get past your mind and all the places within you that are accusing you, where you're carrying that guilt and shame and condemnation towards yourself or towards anyone else, and just shut that off and dive deep within. You won't be disappointed with what you find. And then the other thing is that the only thing that matters is that we love each other. Our disagreements are not what matters, no matter how serious they may seem, with all the religious and political upheaval that we have in the world. The only thing that we can control and the only thing that matters is how we treat each other. In the end, that's what will save the world. And Dale, thank you so much for having me on. It's really been a joy to talk to you.
Oh, it's been my pleasure as well. And I just want to end today's podcast by saying, please feel free to check out. I mean, it has made a big impact on my life personally. That's why I had Melissa on the show also, because I like to share with everyone people that I believe make a massive impact on people's lives. And Melissa fits this role to a T. You can check out her YouTube channel, which is, I got it right this time, Love Covered Life. Right? I'm just thinking Melissa Denyce because I see your name on there as well. That's why I said that. But that doesn't mean I definitely watch this channel often. I love I love. Out of all the YouTube channels, out of all the spiritual channels out there, this is one of my favorite at this point. Love Covered Life. And just watching Melissa's videos, you will feel peace wash over you, because she seems to, well, as you can see here, she radiates peace. So you can just sit there and stare at the camera, not say anything, Melissa, and people would feel peace. I'm serious. It's I'm not just saying that to give her what's that word, patronize. I'm not. This is sincere. This is sincere from my heart. So thank you, Melissa, for the impact you've made on my life, and you continue to, and thank you for the impact you are making on so many people's lives.
Thank you so much for those kind words. It's such an encouragement. And you are an amazing person with a wonderful energy as well. And I'm so glad to have met you.
Oh, thank you. And I hope one day, because we are evolving on these journeys, I hope one day you'll say yes to coming back again and sharing where you're at that point in time.
I would love to.
All right. Thank you very much. Melissa Denyce has been my guest once again. Love Covered Life. Check out her YouTube channel. Thank you very much for being on another edition of the Soul Inspire podcast.